Russian treasure. The Su-35 Flanker E lies immobilized in the mud, its landing gear destroyed following an embarrassing belly touchdown. Special operators from Ukrainian GUR have precisely 20 minutes to extract the $50 million radar system before Russian aircraft show up to obliterate any trace. Success means they possess the Kremlin's most protected intelligence. Failure means they're trapped in the planet's most costly firefight. This wasn't simply equipment malfunction. This was a robbery that began 2 hours earlier with a fleet of phantoms. When you wonder why they abandoned the second MiG hijacking plan and focused on a Su-35 instead, I'll reveal an incredible military intelligence detail. The Su-35's radar represents an engineering marvel, yet it operates on software with a rather unusual characteristic. Each time the system initializes, it transmits a small encrypted verification signal to its command center, similar to how your legacy Windows computer would connect home to verify an activation code. For the Russians, this represented a routine security protocol. For the Ukrainians, it became a tracking mechanism. They hadn't simply discovered a vulnerability. They'd uncovered a gateway into the Kremlin's most protected aircraft cockpit. For 4 consecutive days, they monitored this particular Su-35 from the 105th Guards Division. They understood its fuel capacity, its servicing timeline, and crucially, the precise instant it would be most exposed in Kursk's gray zone. However, there's a complication. Kursk isn't some training ground. It's a danger zone. The Russians have established a defensive shield across the territory with S-400 and Panzer systems positioned every 30 meters. It's a location where airborne objects typically meet their end within moments. The pressure couldn't be more intense. Had the Ukrainians simply wanted the jet destroyed, they could have deployed a missile and finished it. But burned titanium debris holds no value. They desired the intelligence core, that $50 million Urbis radar, plus the encryption protocol safeguarding the complete Russian Air Force communication network. The Phantom Swarm tracked. The objective was a non-destructive takedown, but penetrating Russian airspace meant navigating a detection grid capable of monitoring 300 contacts simultaneously. A single error, 1 moment of delay, and the predators would transform into prey. But innovative tactics combined with cutting-edge US technology would make the unthinkable achievable. The ambush was prepared. They simply needed the Su-35 to accept the lure and enter a deceptive labyrinth it wouldn't escape. For 30 in the morning, 20 Ukrainian LUT drones lift into the air, their motors howling at 120 meters. At $15,000 apiece, these are essentially airborne explosives carriers, and they're flying directly toward Russia's energy infrastructure in Kursk. Within the Russian operations center, the defensive network experiences complete chaos. 20 contacts are advancing across their displays, and the leadership faces a harsh decision. Do they disregard the danger and witness their fuel facilities burn? Or do they launch $2 million S-400 interceptors at $15,000 fiberglass decoys? The alarm prevails. Moscow demands the elite fighters. 2 Su-35 flankers launch from the Voronezh runway, releasing 36,600 pounds of maximum afterburner power to engage the disposable swarm. For these veteran pilots, this appears to be target practice. They anticipate their simple victories, and they anticipate them immediately. 6 minutes into the operation, the initial Su-35 pilot acquires his OLS-35 infrared sensor onto a Lubidi. He doesn't require a radar acquisition. He desires a precise, silent elimination. The heat tracking are 73 missile departs the launcher at Mach 2.5. 5 seconds afterward, explosion. The Lubidi drone vanishes in a substantial thermal detonation, converting $15,000 of composite into a rain of flaming debris. The Russian pilot reports over communications. Contact eliminated. Effortless. He executes a sharp turn, endures 7 Gs, and targets the following one. Another R-73 cuts through the early sky. Strike. A second drone disintegrates. F-16 proximity strike. Russian leadership celebrates, but they should be examining their expenditures. They just consumed $4 million in missiles to eliminate $30,000 in drones. It resembles using a luxury sports car to crush a pair of $10 toy boards. It functions, but the economics are catastrophic. The Russian pilots grow overconfident now, advancing their power settings, pursuing the surviving drones. They're penetrating deeper into the combat area, abandoning the protection of their ground-based defensive systems. They believe they're dominating the planet's most costly shooting gallery. What they fail to recognize is that while they were occupied destroying inexpensive decoys, their flight systems were receiving digital corruption through that vulnerability Ukraine located 96 hours prior. As the SU-35 chased the final surviving drone, traveling well past its protected perimeter, it transformed into the ambush victim. Each elimination they achieved pulls them further into the phantom formation, a maze of illusions where the authentic threats are preparing to emerge, and they won't be as simple to hit as a motorized lawnmower. Here's the reason. Destroying those budget decoys actually became a fatal sentence for an $85 million aircraft. The instant that Russian pilot activated the weapon against the Lubidi drones, he accomplished two objectives. He transmitted his precise GPS position to everyone within 100 miles. As the initial drone exploded, 60 drones from the Phantom Swarm 2.0 squadron deployed simultaneously from concealed positions just 10 miles distant. Picture yourself engaged in a pursuit game within a mirrored corridor. You observe your target everywhere, yet every time you strike, you only contact glass. That's precisely what began occurring on the Su-35's detection display. These 60 drones weren't merely airborne. They were equipped with sophisticated AI systems that were interfacing directly with the Russian detection equipment. Utilizing the digital vulnerability, Ukraine's modified drones understood precisely which wavelengths the Su-35 was scanning. They didn't simply interrupt the transmission, they distorted it. The crash, $85 million jet down. The outcome, on the Russian pilot screen, he didn't observe 60 miniature drones. He observed 60 F-16 Vipers approaching him from every conceivable angle at Mach 2. This is the stunning revelation. The pilot entered complete terror. He attempted to acquire a contact at his forward position, but it immediately disappeared and materialized at his rear. He's frantically operating controls attempting to achieve a missile acquisition, but the $50 million detection system is only providing failure notifications. Contact disappeared, re-establishing. The planet's most sophisticated air dominance equipment now looks like a malfunctioning 1990s monitor during a lightning storm. But while the Su-35 was occupied pursuing illusions and consuming fuel in a desperate aerial battle against phantoms, it completely overlooked a small, nearly silent signature traveling just 50 feet above terrain. That was the genuine danger. A solitary Ukrainian F-16 Viper utilizing information transmitted directly from a Saab-340 AWACS orbiting securely 150 miles distant. The F-16 maintained its detection system completely inactive. It was a covert executioner. At a range of 40 miles, the Ukrainian pilot activated the weapon release and deployed an AIM-120 missile. Paradoxically, this wasn't a destruction attempt. Ukraine didn't desire a burned titanium pile. They desired the intelligence core. The AIM-120 was configured to proximity detonation setting. It wasn't targeting the propulsion. It was targeting the space just several feet above the Su-35's fuselage. 3, 2, 1. The missile detonated, but it wasn't targeting the cockpit. It was configured to explode 10 feet above the rear stabilizer assembly. A dispersal of tungsten fragments shredded the horizontal control surfaces and severed the main hydraulic circuits in the tail boom. Instantly, the unstoppable machine was incapacitated. It didn't fragment. It transformed into a supersonic glider, the M1070 extraction convoy. As the Su-35 executed a violent belly touchdown in the Kursk mud, the airframe operated as a 60-foot energy absorber, maintaining the Airbus AESA in the nose completely undamaged. The Russian pilot has precisely 1.5 seconds to decide. He activates the ejection system, the canopy rockets away, and the pilot is launched into the atmosphere under a white parachute, observing his $85 million occupation vanish into the earth. But the genuine conflict is only starting. Every detection operator within 200 miles just witnessed that signature disappear. Moscow experiences total panic. They understand precisely what's aboard that aircraft. The Airbus radar is the ultimate asset, and they'd prefer to transform that location into a hold and permit Ukraine to access it. 5:22 in the morning, back at Russian headquarters, the directive is ruthless and swift. Destroy the debris. No survivors, no proof. Two Su-34 fallback bombers circling 60 miles distant are instantly redirected to the impact location. Their objective is straightforward: release 4 FAB-500 laser-directed bombs and convert that Su-35 into a 30-foot hole before the Ukrainians can even detect the aviation fuel. However, the GWAR Grand Theft Aero Squad is already present. Rising from a nearby forest edge like a creature from an aggressive metal concert, the M1070 HET heavy machinery carrier emerges into position. Imagine the planet's most imposing oversized transport, but manufactured by Oshkosh and engineered to transport 70-ton M1 Abrams tanks through liquid earth. This 8x8 machine powered by a 700 horsepower Detroit diesel motor grinds through the terrain, its 53-inch wheels creating trenches deep enough to conceal a motorcycle. The GWAR technicians exit before the vehicle even halts. They have precisely 12 minutes. Moving a Su-35 with its 50-foot wingspan is unfeasible on these paths, so they position linear explosive devices along the wing attachment points. In a regulated separation, the enormous wings are detached. The Kursk mud, flash frozen by the dawn cold, functions like a lubricated surface. The M1070's paired 55,000-pound winches scream as they pull the wingless fuselage onto the transport platform. It's a 15-ton industrial choreography practiced 50 times on vintage Soviet airframes. Defeating Lancets. The EW frequency dome. The countdown continues and the atmosphere isn't pausing. Vampire, vampire. The Ukrainian Saab-340 AWACS hovering securely behind the frontier detects the Russian Su-34s engaging their laser targeting systems. The Russians deploy 2 Kh-29 missiles, each transporting a 700-pound explosive, racing toward the debris at Mach 2. But Ukraine didn't simply transport a vehicle. They transported an imperceptible barrier. The 50 surviving AI drones establish a multi-frequency concealment barrier at 500 feet. They disperse a dense mixture of carbon fiber interference material and metallic particles. To the Russian Su-34's laser targeting systems and TV-directed Kh-29 missiles, the impact location simply disappears. The laser emissions scatter ineffectively against the particle screen and the visual trackers are obscured by a gray emptiness. The missiles lose targeting, exceeding the debris by 974 feet. The detonation pulse destroys the glass of a neighboring rural structure, but the Su-35 remains undamaged. The Russian Su-34 pilots are enraged. They descend lower, attempting to achieve visual confirmation, but they advance directly into the Patriot ambush. A Ukrainian Patriot system concealed in a woodland 20 miles distant finally transitions its detection from passive to active. Detection mode is a beacon. Engagement mode is a focus beam. The Su-34's threat alert system produces a continuous signal. The Patriot trap, protecting the prize. The Russian pilot maneuvers aggressively, releasing interference material like his existence requires it, because it actually does. A PAC-3 interceptor exits the container at Mach 4. In under 15 seconds, the atmosphere over Kursk is illuminated by a $50 million explosion as the initial Su-34 is eliminated. Down on the terrain, the M1070 operator is perspiring through his combat equipment. The Su-35 is finally on the transport platform, but it's positioned awkwardly. 8,000 tons of agricultural storage in our previous footage was substantial, but this is $85 million of handle with extreme care. Accelerate, accelerate, accelerate. The M1070 engages gear, its 18-speed gearbox screaming as it moves the aerodynamic 15-ton fuselage cargo onto the paved route. They're traveling at 45 miles per hour, rapid for a structure on wheels, but a stationary target for Russian bombardment. Moscow is now deploying everything available. They deploy a formation of 10 Lancet kamikaze drones from a nearby elevation. These are the precision instruments of the Russian military. They descend at 100 miles per hour, targeting the M1070's power unit. But Ukrainian electronic countermeasure experts on the rear of the HET engage a frequency-shifting protective zone. Utilizing Starlink Mini for immediate information synchronization, they establish a 300-foot neutralization area. As the Lancets penetrate the perimeter, their video transmissions convert to interference. For Lancets lose guidance, impacting harmlessly into the wheel marks. 3 additional are intercepted by AW operators utilizing portable Skynode S interference devices. It's a 30-mile sprint to the frontier through a passage of hostility. Russian 152mm bombardment is surrounding the road. The projectiles impacting progressively nearer. Every detonation transmits a spray of fragments against the vulnerable airframe. It produces a sound like 1,000 mallets striking a metal sheet. The digital sandbox, hacking the backdoor. The GRU squad isn't simply operating vehicles. They're functioning. Within the transport platform support compartment, a specialist has a fiber optic connection inserted into the SU-35's electronics compartment. He's not observing the bombardment. He's observing the programming. I've acquired it. He communicates quietly over the network. The Arbus is still transmitting. It's attempting to connect home. The Russian detection equipment, even in its disabled condition, is still a betrayer. It's transmitting a reduced power servicing transmission engineered to assist Russian specialists in locating a missing aircraft. But in the possession of the GUR, this transmission is a digital navigation tool. As the M1070 traverses the final crossing into Ukrainian-controlled Sumy, the Russian Iskander ballistic missile finally reaches. It's delayed. The missile's 1,000-pound explosive destroys the crossing precisely 45 seconds after the M1070 passed it. The robbery is accomplished. The heavyweight has transported the treasure. The Su-35 rests on the transport platform, muddy, damaged, but its intelligence core is completely accessible for extraction. As the M1070 HET advances into an extensively camouflaged facility in the Sumy territory, this is where the ultimate treachery evolves from a battlefield robbery into a strategic catastrophe for the Kremlin. Within the facility, Ukrainian GUR cyber specialists isolate the Su-35's Arbus AESA radar in a Faraday enclosure, a chamber that eliminates all unauthorized transmissions. But they don't simply observe. They connect a fiber optic connection directly into the servicing interface, establishing a man-in-the-middle connection. This permits the detection equipment to believe it's interfacing with the network, while the GUR examines every information packet. What they discover inside this digital connection is the ultimate prize of inefficient Russian development. Recall that Connect Home verification we referenced? It appears the Russian Su-35's avionic assembly functions precisely like a premium but inadequately protected smart residence network. To preserve air dominance synchronization, every Su-35 in the 105th Guards Division is configured to regularly contact a primary server at the Voronezh Air Station to refresh its encrypted information connection. It's the supreme paradox. Russia's most sophisticated combat aircraft has the digital fidelity of a stolen smartphone attempting to locate its proprietor. Rather than preventing the transmission, the GUR specialists establish a digital simulation, a fabricated setting that deceives the Su-35 into believing it's still positioned on a Russian airfield. The detection equipment contacts Voronezh and Voronezh responds. Success. The reverse trace is immediate. Within moments, the Ukrainians aren't simply examining one aircraft. They are observing through the perspective of the complete Voronezh air station. They've circumvented the security barrier and now possess a current schematic of every shelter, every fuel storage, and most critically, the precise GPS positions of every other Su-35 presently receiving servicing. Moscow didn't simply forfeit an $85 million aircraft. They just transferred the administrative access to their complete frontline aerial activities. Within 48 hours of this non-destructive extraction, Russia is compelled to immobilize its complete flanker squadron in the territory. They comprehend their encrypted information connection is no longer a defense. It's a positioning signal. This establishes a substantial 200-mile protection gap in the Kursk sector, compelling Russian bombers to operate without fighter protection or withdraw to stations deep within Russia. The defensive shield has been dismantled and discarded. Now let's examine the calculations of treachery. On one aspect, you have the Kremlin, which invested 15 years and billions of rubles engineering a Raptor destroyer that concluded being seized by a 700 horsepower vehicle and some intelligent programming. On the opposite aspect, you have Ukraine, which utilized $600,000 in phantom drones to obtain a $50 million detection system and intelligence valued at billions. But here's the inquiry for you, the strategic intellects at home. If you were the Ukrainian leadership and you just uncovered this digital vulnerability, what would your subsequent action be? Would you initiate a substantial assault on the Voronezh station immediately? Or would you remain silent and persist monitoring every Russian flight schedule for the following month? Share your strategic selection in the responses below. Appreciation for viewing this comprehensive examination into the robbery of the era. If you desire to observe more Grand Theft Auto and the technology that's transforming the nature of contemporary conflict, ensure to activate that subscribe function. Farewell for the present.